there, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about deviance. So we're dealing with the violation of social norms. We'll also be talking about crime, which is a violation of formal norms that we set. Now deviance can be a trait, a belief, or behavior. Now this is set by our groups, our institutions, our employers. Once we stray outside of our group norms, that is deviance. Something that is projected towards us from the group is called social stigma. This is a negative label that devalues us once we commit an act of deviance. Deviance varies across societies. It varies within societies. In the U.S., we are 5% of the world's population, but we're 31% of mass shootings. So this varies across the world, right? We vary across situation. 75% of adults in the U.S. think using a cell phone in public is okay. 4 or 5% even say at the movies. So we have different rules for different contexts that we have. So formal deviance violates law. Informal disregards accepted social norms. That's what you need to remember. So at this time, these things change from time to time. So like same-sex marriage is viewed now as it is viewed different now as it was 10, 20, 30, even 30 years ago. Recreational marijuana is viewed different now. Illegal gambling. A lot of these things change. That our idea of deviance becomes different when certain behaviors become more normative. So within crimes, we have violent crimes, we have property crimes, we have different kinds of crimes. We're going to get into all these. So a violent crime might be like murder, rape, robbery. Property crime might be like burglar, arson. Property is much more common. Most offenders of this are not caught. Street crimes aren't normally random. Males are more likely to be a victim of crime, but males also engage in more things like robbery and homicide. Crime towards women tends to be in the form of like rape, sexual assault, even interrelationship violence. Now we also have hate crimes. Dylan Roof, back a few years back, went into a black church and into a Bible study and shot 9 black people. What defines hate crimes? It's usually based on prejudicial behavior. It can be towards a race, towards a sexual orientation, things of that nature. We have white collar crimes. Most of these are not caught. Some of them are even well known, but still not prosecuted. We also have cyber crimes. These are conducted online. Many of us have seen these or have seen terrible attempts of hacking, of phishing, the scamming. A lot of elderly are victims of these. People are victims of these from time to time, even though a lot of them seem obvious to us. We have organized crime. These are groups that supply illegal goods and services for profit. So think like people distributing drugs, human trafficking, things of that nature. Now we also have what's referred to as victimless crime, when there's no direct victim involved. This could be like drug use, illegal gambling. Some would say prostitution falls under this, especially when the woman enters that field voluntarily. Now to get into our sociological theories, we have our macro theory of functionalism. Functionalists would say that deviance affirms our norms and our values. It lets us know what's normative and what values we should hold. It provides temporary safety valves, because sometimes these things are allowed. Think like college spring break. You don't see thousands of arrests for underage drinking, even though there could be. So some of that is allowed. Some deviance bolsters the economy in the form of like jails and prisons, things of that nature. Now there's a few theories we'll dig deeper into later, but under functionalism, anomie is one. It leaves people unsure how to act with social change. Think like the industrial age created different things. People were moving to cities. It changed the norms of the people that lived out in the country. Think 9/11, we had to act different at the airport. There were a different set of norms after that. So think bigger events with anomie. And then we got strain theory. It says that people commit crime because it's necessary. So like they have personal goals that aren't being met, or they have limited access to that. And we can dig deeper into both of those at another time. But a criticism of functionalism is the dysfunction, because it creates tension. It creates insecurity if people are deviant around us. It can erode trust in our relationships with people. It can decrease our confidence in institutions, and it can be really costly. So those are some of the arguments against functionalism. So if we look at conflict theory, Conflict theorists would say there's a strong connection with capitalism, social inequality, because capitalism is about personal gain, not about collective well-being. Capitalism can encourage corporate crime. Corporations often avoid paying taxes, perpetuating inequality. And laws tend to serve the ruling class. Money gets people elected. And in turn, those people that get elected create public policy that's favorable to those with the money. Now, a dysfunction of conflict theory, of what would be a criticism, is it kind of overemphasizes capitalism. There's other examples, like Japan is very hardcore into capitalism, but they don't have the deviance that we have. So there's good examples out there of capitalism. It kind of downplays street crimes that people like to commit. Some people just like to commit crime for fun, and it's not because of a structural purpose. Not all corporate people get away with crimes, so that kind of interferes with conflict theory a little bit, and it ignores the functional purposes of crime that we just went over. Now, to look at feminist theory, women tend to be in more white-collar jobs that happen to pay less. Think like bank teller and things of that nature. So there's a temptation there, and they also, just because of the numbers alone, they tend to commit more of that type of crime. Prostitution being the highest crime, often due to trafficking or financial ruin that women commit. Think domestic violence if they were the victim of a rape. There's a lot of reasons that people will go into prostitution. Feminists would also say that that's because we live in a patriarchal society. This means that men control cultural, political, and economic structures that often produce violence against women. Gender roles that we have growing up that we already discussed, they tend to reinforce this inequality. Rape culture contributes to it. Violence towards women can be perpetuated by media and pop culture. So yeah, we have this word called rape culture due to that. A criticism of feminist theory, obviously it's not showing the other theories, but it also doesn't show specifics of patriarchy victimizing women, and it focuses on male violence, not female violence, because that happens too. It also doesn't discuss how age, social class, or things like race factor into this as well. Now, looking at our micro theory of symbolic interactionism, symbolic interactionists would say that deviance is in the eye of the beholder, because deviance is socially constructed. For example, in France, 47% of French people think extramarital affairs are not okay, compared to the US, 84% of people think extramarital affairs are not okay. So it's in the eye of the beholder there. We have differential association theory, which we dig more into later. This says that people learn deviance through interaction with others. So think of how we learn things from family members, or how we learn things from people at school, or how sometimes criminals in jail learn things from other criminals. This gets into that differential association. Labeling theory is about society's reaction to deviant behavior. It's a major factor in defining people. If somebody assumes you're a thief and you're always going to be a thief, and your group start treating you that way, you might just start stealing more. So this is where labeling theory kicks in. Criticism of symbolic interaction, though, is it ignores impulse crimes. Sometimes people do things in the heat of passion. It ignores crimes by people who grew up in law-abiding families. So it can't be differential association if my whole family is good and I'm the one committing the crime. Symbolic interactionism also does not explain why only minorities who grew up in disadvantaged places join gangs. It doesn't explain why crime rates are higher in different parts of the country, or why only one sibling would be somebody who commits a lot of deviance. So when we're talking about rehabilitation, control theory says that there's less deviance with more social bonds. The more that people join clubs and join activities and have relationships, the less they'll commit crime. We have the criminal justice system of judges, lawyers, government agencies who try to fix these patterns. We have social workers and outreach that try to get to people in a preventative measure before they commit deviant crimes. We do have some community policing where they're walking the neighborhoods, getting to know people. That's proven to be effective. And then we have incarceration, capital punishment. These are used for a deterrent, but sometimes incarceration is used as rehabilitation. So next time we're going to get into social stratification.